My granddaughter always called me the one who notices everything. She said I had a gift, the ability to read a room the way other people read books. I never thought much of it. I just paid attention. After 63 years of living, you learn that the most important things are rarely the ones people say out loud. So when my daughter called me in October to say that her daughter, my granddaughter Clara, was bringing her boyfriend home for Christmas for the first time, I felt something stir in my chest. Not excitement exactly, something quieter, something watchful. His name is Derek, my daughter said. Clara's absolutely crazy about him. You'll love him, Mom. He's very charming. I noted the word, charming. In my experience, charming was a word people used when they couldn't think of anything more specific to say. Charming meant he smiled at the right times. Charming meant he knew what people wanted to hear. I'd known a few charming men in my life. My late husband, God rest his soul, was never described as charming. He was described as steady, honest, occasionally stubborn. I'd take stubborn over charming every single time. But I kept that thought to myself. Clara was 26, bright, and had a laugh that could fill an entire house. She'd worked hard for everything she had. A nursing job she loved. A little apartment in the city she decorated herself. A small group of friends who adored her. She hadn't had an easy road. Her father walked out when she was 9. She'd watched my daughter hold the family together on a teacher's salary, and she'd grown up with a deep respect for hard work and quiet dignity. I was proud of her in a way that sometimes made my throat tight just thinking about it. When she called me herself, a week before Christmas, her voice had that particular brightness to it, the kind that sounds like sunshine but has something almost too careful underneath it. Grandma, I can't wait for you to meet him. He just really loves me, like, genuinely. I've never had that before. Tell me about him, I said, settling into my chair with my tea. He's 31. He works in finance. He's really protective of me. Like, he always wants to know where I am, always wants to make sure I'm safe. I took a slow sip of my tea. That sounds like a lot of attention, I said carefully. It is, she said, and I could hear her smiling. It's nice, Grandma. It means he cares. I said the right things after that. I told her I was looking forward to meeting him. I told her I was sure he was wonderful. And I meant the part about looking forward to meeting him, just perhaps not in the way she expected. They arrived on December 23rd, late afternoon. My daughter had decorated the house beautifully. Pine garlands on the mantel, white lights along the front porch, the smell of cinnamon and something buttery drifting from the kitchen. My younger grandson, Clara's brother, was home from college and sprawled on the couch watching football. Everything was warm and full and right. I was standing at the kitchen counter arranging a cheese board when I heard the front door open. Clara came in first, unwinding a red scarf from her neck, her cheeks pink from the cold. She looked lovely. But she also looked, and I filed this away immediately, like someone who had just taken a breath before stepping into water. A small, almost invisible bracing. Derek came in behind her. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that was just beginning to gray at the temples. He had the kind of face that photographed well. Strong jaw, easy smile. The sort of eyes that held yours just a beat longer than necessary, as if he wanted you to know he was really listening. He wore a nice coat. He carried a bottle of wine in one hand. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, crossing to me with his hand extended. "I've heard so much about you. Clara talks about you constantly." "All good things, I hope," I said, shaking his hand. "The best things," he said. And he smiled. Charming, I thought. There it was. He was good at dinner. I'll give him that. He complimented my daughter's cooking twice and asked my grandson thoughtful questions about his engineering program. He refilled glasses without being asked. He laughed at the right moments. He was, by every observable measure, Exactly what a boyfriend should be on the first family Christmas. But I watched Clara. I watched the way she glanced at him before she spoke, as if checking something. I watched the way she started a story about a patient at work. Something funny, the kind of story she would normally have told with big gestures and her whole face, and then stopped halfway through when Derek made a small sound, almost a clearing of the throat, barely audible. She stopped. She redirected. She picked up her wine glass. I watched the way she went to the kitchen to help my daughter, and how Derek's eyes followed her through the doorway, then dropped to his phone. I noted all of it. I said nothing. Not yet. After dinner, my grandson put on a movie, and Derek settled on the couch next to Clara with his arm around her in a way that looked comfortable, but kept her very still. My daughter and I cleaned up the kitchen together, and I could hear the television in the other room and the low murmur of Derek saying something, and Clara's voice answering, quick, a little quiet. Around 9 o'clock, Clara came into the kitchen to refill the water pitcher. I was drying a serving bowl. She looked tired in the particular way that has nothing to do with sleep, tired behind the eyes, where something is always working, always calculating. "You doing okay, sweetheart?" I asked. "Of course," she said, and smiled. The smile reached her mouth, but not quite the rest of her face. I handed her a dish towel without comment. A few minutes later, I walked through the living room, on my way to the front hall to get my cardigan. Derek was still on the couch, but my grandson had gone to get a snack. Derek was looking at his phone, and as I passed behind the couch, I wasn't trying to see. I want to be clear about that. I caught a glimpse of his screen. He was looking at her location. Not a text, not a news article. He had her location pulled up on his screen, a little blue dot on a map, our house. He was watching it the way you watch something that belongs to you. I kept walking. I got my cardigan from the hall. I stood in the front hallway for a moment, in the quiet, and I thought about what I had just seen. Then I went back to the kitchen and poured myself a small glass of wine. My daughter was covering leftovers with foil. "Isn't he lovely?" she said. "He's very polished," I said. She looked at me over the top of her glasses. She knew that voice. "Mom." "He seems very attentive," I said, and left it there. Christmas Eve was busy in the way I love, messy and loud and full of the particular chaos of family. My daughter's neighbor came by in the morning with cookies. My grandson commandeered the kitchen to attempt homemade waffles that were somehow both burnt and undercooked. Clara and I sat at the kitchen table with coffee, and for about 45 minutes, with Derek still asleep upstairs, she was almost entirely herself again. She told me about a little girl on her ward, 8 years old, who had insisted on giving Clara her drawings to decorate the nurse's station. She did the voice, the gestures, the whole story, laughing, eyes bright. The Clara I had known her whole life. Then we heard footsteps on the stairs. It was subtle. She didn't stop talking, but she slowed. She sat a little straighter. She wrapped both hands around her coffee mug. Derek appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair still slightly disheveled, wearing a fleece pullover. He looked at Clara, then at me, then back at Clara. "Morning," he said. "You were up early." "Grandma and I were just talking," Clara said. Light tone. "Careful. You should have woken me up. I didn't want to disturb you." He smiled. "You're never a disturbance," he said. He crossed the kitchen and kissed the top of her head, but his hand on her shoulder stayed a moment longer than affection required. "What were you two talking about?" "Waffle disasters," I said pleasantly. "My grandson's culinary ambitions?" Derek laughed. He got himself a cup of coffee. He sat down at the table, across from Clara, not beside me, and the easy conversation I'd been having with my granddaughter for 45 minutes, quietly and completely dissolved. I refilled my coffee cup and decided that this afternoon I would find a way to speak to Clara alone. The opportunity came after lunch. My daughter and Derek were in the living room, my daughter showing him the old photo albums she always brought out at Christmas. It was her favorite tradition, the annual embarrassment of childhood pictures. My grandson had gone out to see a friend. The house had a brief, rare stillness. I found Clara in the back bedroom, the one she always stayed in when she visited, sitting on the edge of the bed with her phone in her hand. She was typing something. Fast. Her jaw was set in a way I recognized. The way you set your jaw when you're choosing your words very carefully because you know they'll be examined. I knocked lightly on the open door. She looked up. Something in her face shifted. Not quite relief, but close to it. "Mind if I sit with you for a minute?" I asked. "Of course not, Grandma." She set the phone face down on the bed. I sat in the little armchair by the window, the one that had been in that room since Clara was small. Outside, it had started to snow. Real snow, the quiet kind. I didn't rush. I've lived long enough to know that rushing someone toward a truth they're not ready to say out loud will only make them retreat. "Your nursing job?" I said. "You mentioned a new schedule. How's that going?" She talked about it for a few minutes. I listened. I asked a follow-up question. And somewhere in the middle of her answer, the tight, careful posture she'd been carrying since she arrived began to settle just slightly. Then her phone buzzed, face down on the bed. She glanced at it without picking it up. It buzzed again, then again. Her jaw did that thing. "You can get that," I said. "It's fine," she said. But she picked it up. She read something. She typed a quick response. She set it back down. "Is it Derek?" I asked, quietly. Just a question. She looked at me, and for a moment I saw it, the thing she'd been working so hard to keep behind her eyes. Not quite fear. Not quite shame. Something that was a mixture of both, with exhaustion layered underneath. "He just wants to know what we're doing," she said. "How often does he check in?" I asked. Silence. "Clara." I leaned forward slightly. "I'm not asking to judge anything. I'm asking because I love you more than anyone in this world, and I have been watching you since you walked through that door, and the girl I know, the one who fills every room she enters, has been very small this whole visit, and I want to understand why." She stared at the carpet. Her hands were in her lap. Outside, the snow fell, soft and indifferent. "It's not," she started. Stopped. "He just worries about me. He says it's because of how much he loves me." "What does he worry about?" I asked. Another silence. "Longer this time, that I'll leave," she said finally. Very quietly. I let that sit in the air between us. "Has he given you reason to think he might restrict where you go?" I asked. "Or who you talk to?" She didn't answer. But she didn't have to. The way her shoulders came forward, the way she looked at the carpet like it might tell her what to say, that was its own answer. "He tracks my location," she said. So quietly, I almost didn't hear it. "He says it so he knows I'm safe. He texts when I don't answer right away. A lot. He says he can't help it, that he's never loved anyone this much, and it scares him." "Clara." "I know," she whispered. "I know how it sounds. I'm not here to tell you how it sounds," I said. "I'm here to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. When is the last time you felt completely relaxed, completely yourself? Without any part of your mind tracking where he was, what mood he was in, whether your answer would be the right one." She looked up at me. Her eyes were wet. "This morning," she said. "When we were having coffee, before he came downstairs, I reached over and took both her hands in mine. My hands are old. They've held a lot of things over the years, newborn babies, grief, ordinary Tuesday mornings. They know how to hold. Then I need you to hear me," I said. "What you just described to me, the tracking, the constant checking, the fear of giving the wrong answer, that is not love. It looks like love. It is dressed in the language of love. But love does not make you smaller, sweetheart. Love does not make you sit straighter when the footsteps come down the stairs." She pressed her lips together. A tear dropped onto the back of my hand. She didn't wipe it away. "I've been trying to tell myself it's just how he is," she said. "That he had a hard childhood, that he's working on it, That if I'm just patient enough. I know, I said. I know that story very well. And I'm not saying he is beyond change, but I am saying that his beyond change. But I am saying that his potential for change is not your responsibility to suffer through. You are not a rehabilitation project. You are my granddaughter, and you deserve someone who loves you in a way that makes you larger, not smaller. She broke then. Not loudly. Clara was never loud in her grief. She folded forward, and I put my arms around her, and she cried the way people cry when they've been holding something for a very long time, quietly and completely, with her whole body. I held her and I said nothing. Sometimes nothing is exactly right. When she straightened up, she looked lighter, emptied out in the good way, the way a room looks lighter after you open the windows. "What do I do?" she asked. "Not today," I said firmly. "Today you are going to dry your eyes and go splash cold water on your face and come have Christmas Eve with your family. What comes next does not have to happen in the next hour. But he'll know something is wrong. Let me worry about that," I said. "You just be easy. Can you do that for me?" She nodded. I squeezed her hands once more and stood up. "You are not in this alone," I told her. "You were never in this alone, you just forgot that for a little while." The next few hours were a particular kind of careful. I stayed close, not conspicuously, but enough. I sat near Clara at dinner. I directed conversation in ways that kept her included, kept her talking, kept the space around her just wide enough that she could breathe. I watched Derek watch her, and I made sure that every time he started to redirect her with one of his small, invisible tools, a look, a slight shift in tone, a question that reframed what she'd just said, I was there with something that moved us gently along. He was good. I'll say that again. He was very good. He knew how to do it without anyone else in the room noticing. Probably no one else had ever been watching closely enough. But I had 63 years and nothing to prove. I could be patient too. After the dishes were done and my grandson had gone to bed and my daughter had fallen asleep in the armchair with a Christmas movie playing quietly in the background, Derek excused himself to take a phone call outside. I found Clara in the kitchen making chamomile tea. "Has he ever frightened you?" I asked. Direct. I needed to know the shape of it. She was quiet for a long moment, spooning honey into her mug. "He's never hit me," she said. "That's not what I asked." She looked up. "Yes," she said softly. "Sometimes." I nodded. I kept my face still. Inside, something old and fierce moved through me. The thing that lives in grandmothers. The thing that doesn't have a polite name. "After the holidays," I said, "I want you to talk to someone, a professional. Not because there's anything wrong with you. There's absolutely nothing wrong with you. But because what you've been living in has a shape, and it helps to have someone help you see the whole shape of it." She nodded. "And I want you to know," I said, "that my door is open. My telephone is on. Whatever you need, whenever you need it, I am here. Do you understand me?" She set down her mug and hugged me hard, the way she used to hug me when she was small and the world felt too big. "I love you, Grandma," she said. "I love you too, sweetheart," I said. "Now drink your tea." They left on the 26th. Derek shook my hand at the door. That same easy smile, held my gaze that same beat too long. "It was wonderful to meet you," he said. "I can see where Clara gets her strength." "Take good care of her," I said. I let my eyes hold his for just a moment longer than comfortable. Not threatening, just clear. The way you look at someone when you want them to understand that you see them. Exactly as they are. Something moved behind his eyes. He looked away first. Clara hugged me last, at the car. She whispered into my shoulder. I made an appointment for January 3rd. I pulled back and looked at her face. Something had shifted there, not healed, not resolved, but oriented. Pointed in a direction, That was enough. That was the beginning. Good girl, I said. I watched their car until it turned at the end of the street. That was 14 months ago. Clara ended the relationship in February. It was not clean or easy. He called her repeatedly. He showed up at her apartment once, and she called the police. She moved to a new apartment in March, closer to her mother. She spent 6 months in therapy with a woman she described as terrifyingly good at her job. She lost 2 friends who thought she was overreacting. She gained a clarity about herself that I watched grow over the phone calls and visits through that long year, solid and quiet as a tree coming in. Last month, she called me on a Tuesday evening, the kind of call with no particular occasion, just to talk. She told me about a patient who had made her laugh, about a book she was reading, about a trail she'd found near her new apartment where she'd started running in the mornings. She talked for 45 minutes. She filled the phone with herself, all the way to the edges. When we hung up, I sat in my chair for a while with the phone in my lap, listening to the quiet of my house. I think about what might have happened if I hadn't been watching that night, if I had been too polite to notice, if I had looked at him and thought, how charming, and left it there. People ask me sometimes, when I tell this story, whether I worried I was overstepping, whether it was my place, whether I should have waited for her to come to me on her own. And I think about Clara's face when she said, this morning, when we were having coffee, before he came downstairs, no, it was absolutely my place. It is always a grandmother's place to notice, to say something when saying something is hard, to hold someone's hands and tell them the truth when the truth is the most loving thing available. That is the job. That is the whole job. And I would do it again without a single moment's hesitation.